Iowa's governor under scrutiny again for the way her administration handles federal money. Illinois' governor signs a new law to make it easier to find out who is making political donations. And the president gives a vote of confidence to the Federal Reserve chair during a period of inflation. We'll get to all of that this morning with Democratic political consultant Kevin Perkins and former Iowa State Representative David Millage, a Republican. Great to see you both. Let's get started right away with the president nominating Jerome Powell to a second term as chair of the Federal Reserve. Powell's a key figure in trying to navigate the U.S. economy during this period of inflation and supply chain backlog. Some progressive Democrats like Senator Elizabeth Warren oppose Powell's choice, will vote against him, in fact, and she argues he failed when it comes to regulation, climate issues, and ethics. Her choice would be Lael Brainerd, who the president tabbed to be the #2 spot with the Fed. The president, moderate Democrats, and Republicans argue stability is needed as chair. So how consequential is this decision? Would a big move be seen as a signal for drastic change being needed and possibly set off a panic in the economy? Kevin, progressives going too far here?
Well, I think this really is a prudent and wise move by the president. I would not necessarily agree that this is a bad thing. You do need some stability, particularly with COVID. I think that is the whole thing, regardless of what people will say. You have fluctuations in the rates of COVID. They're increasing in Europe now, the potential would increase here. I think Chairman Powell gives the economy that stability that you need. And, you know, he has navigated the monetary aspect of things well. I have to give him credit for that. He's a little hawkish. I think he'll probably put the brakes a little bit on stimulus over the course of time to keep our economy cool enough and kind of camp down on those inflationary tendencies that we're seeing now, mostly because of supply chain issues. But I don't think this is a bad move. I think it's okay.
David, you agree that this is a good move then for stability's sake? Because the progressives certainly don't like it.
Yes, I believe it's the right move to make. It's one of the few decisions that President Biden has made that I fully agree with. He is a deficit, an inflation hawk, and that's what we need now. I mean, we all realize that inflation is the great robber of the middle class, and it affects everyone, but particularly those who are living paycheck to paycheck when they find their paychecks don't go as far as they used to. And I just think it's the right move to make, and the progressives are wrong on this one.
The challenge will be to stabilize the economy and certainly inflation and see if that can stay in check. So Illinois has a new law on the books for campaign donations. It tries to put the kibosh on contributions from out of state and what people call dark money that can't be traced to a specific source. The law requires candidates to report the sources of their campaign donations. However, it does not apply to contributions less than $1,000. How important is it to know who's behind contributions, and can these changes be effective, or will campaigns and donors just find a loophole around it? David?
Well, the Supreme Court just ruled last summer that nonprofits cannot be required by the state to release their donor list. It was a California case that came down, I believe, in July of last year. So you're not going to be able to trace this so-called dark money. And all dark money is, it's contributions made by nonprofit corporations who don't have to disclose their membership or their donors. So I don't know what they're trying to get at. Or are they trying to pass something that the Supreme Court just said last summer you can't do? I think they're going up the wrong alley here.
Kevin, what's your take on this? Is this a good move? Can it be effective?
Well, I think politically it's a good move. I don't know, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't really address that. But politically, if you're against having the voters know who is supporting you, that is not good politics. And that's what the pushback on this is. Now, it works both ways. If a Democrat is taking money, let's say, from the political arm of the National Rifle Association, or a Republican is taking money from the political arm of the NAACP. Those may be some things that particular politician may not want their voters to know. And I think it's just best for the voters to have all the information possible. This bill, or excuse me, this law also includes some provisions for vote by mail to be permanent, and also, you know, some disability issues where each polling site has to have a booth for wheelchair accessibility. So there are some good things out of this that I think both Republicans and Democrats can get on board with.
Well, it certainly has a lot more behind it. This was certainly the interesting and perhaps the most controversial aspect to it, and David makes a good point. Will it stand up to muster if it gets to the Supreme Court? So let's get to our last topic here. Iowa State Auditor Rob Sand found problems with Governor Kim Reynolds' money management. His audit of the state's finances found Reynolds used almost $450,000 in pandemic relief money to pay her staff. That would be in violation of federal law. It's not a lot in the grand scheme of the millions of dollars for the state, but it's also not the first time Reynolds' handling of money has come into question. Last year, the governor had to give back $21 million in pandemic relief because she used it to upgrade the state's computer system. So is this a fool me once, fool me twice sort of thing? How serious should this behavior be taken, Kevin?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You have to look at the past behavior and take that into context. It's something that this administration has done before. Whether or not her staff was legitimately involved with dedicated COVID relief work, if she is able to produce documentation dating back to that time that satisfies the office basically satisfies the documentation. If she's able to do that, that's one thing. But if they're changing documentation, that's another. So, but she does have a history of this, so we'll have to wait and see. But the office of the Inspector General is what I was trying to get out. That's what they're going to demand to see. So if she's able to produce that, then we'll have to wait and see what the outcome is.
David,
Doesn't look good, though.
The auditor says he has tried to ask for that documentation. It wasn't produced. So what's your take on the governor's actions here and I guess the pattern possibly?
Well, I don't think there's any pattern here. This pandemic has been challenging to a number of office holders and bureaucrats and all those involved in getting services out to people who need it throughout this pandemic. And I believe the U.S. Treasury Department has ruled that governors may use the COVID funds to reimburse salaries needed to take care of the pandemic, the services people need during the pandemic. So the Treasury's already ruled you can use it for salaries, and you have to look at where this is coming from too. You've got an auditor who's got a political agenda, who's going to be seeking higher office, and he seems to be sending out press releases that he has no business sending out. This would be, if this is criminal violation, it's not for the auditors, it's for the Attorney General to bring charges and for the jury to decide that the law has been broken. But as far as I can see, the Treasury Department has said you can use these monies to pay salaries of government employees.
Well, you have to document it and you have to prove it was used for dedicated work in COVID-19. So that's yet to be done, and we'll have to wait and see. If it's not, she's going to have to pay it back.
All right, David Millers, Kevin Perkins, thank you so much for the conversation. Both of you be safe, and we hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. That brings us to our question of the week. What do you think about the new election law in Illinois that requires the identification of political donors, banning dark money contributions? Send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page on my page.